Hi guys, welcome to our last lesson of Unit 1, and we are going to be talking about graphing polynomials in standard form. So the last lesson we talked about this chart, and we found out when you have an even degree polynomial. So like your polynomial has the biggest exponent of like x to the fourth or x squared or something like that, they're either going to both end up or both end down. So if it's positive, it's going to end up in positive, positive. So it's up and up. If it's negative, it's going to end up negative, negative, which ends up being down, down. So your end behavior, so where it begins and where it ends, is going to end up down, down. We also learned that odd polynomials, so like x to the first power, x to the third power, those are going to be opposite. So either starts down and ends up, or starts up and ends down. So if we have a positive leading coefficient, it's actually going to start down and end up. So it starts down and ends up. If we have a negative leading coefficient, it's going to do the opposite again. It's going to start up and end down. So that's going to guide us when we go to these next problems. Okay, so on this one, we're going to just answer a few different questions. So the first thing is the degree of the polynomial. And so this is broken up into factored form. So we need to add the degrees. So there's x to the first, x squared, and another x to the fourth. So if I multiply those all together, I would end up getting x to the fourth power. So that's the degree. Our leading coefficient is 1 because there's no number out there. So if I have an even degree and a positive leading coefficient, it's going to end up something like this. So it's going to be positive infinity, positive infinity. Okay, also it's in intercept form, so the intercepts are really easy to grab. So this is x equals 0, x equals -4, and x equals 2. Something I want to point about this one is because it's a squared at -4, we're going to have a bounce. So it's going to look something like that, where it like bounces at the x-intercept. So we're going to see that here in a second. Okay. The y-intercept is where we set x equal to 0 and see what y is. So let's see. We end up with this, which because we're multiplying by 0 is going to give us 0. So our y-intercept we already know is 0, 0. So let's go ahead and fill in our x-intercepts. So -4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 2, 1, 2. Okay, so let's kind of put everything together to create the graph. So I know that it's going to start out up here, and there's going to be a bounce at -4. So it's going to do something like that. I know that it curves again because it goes down, and then it ends up in positive infinity. So again, I don't know where this is happening and where this is happening. I don't really care. I just want to know the basic idea. Okay, so let's go on to the next one. So this one, we're going to have to work for a little bit. So I'm going to do factor by grouping and see what happens. Okay, so I factored it completely, and I ended up with this. So my x-intercepts are x equals 1 right here, but then there's a repeat here. So that means that there's going to be a bounce at x equals -1. Okay, so our y-intercept, if we put zeros in here, then our y-intercept is going to be 0, -1. In standard form, it's really easy to see the degree. So the degree is 3, and the leading coefficient is 1. So I have an odd degree and a positive leading coefficient. So remember, this means that they're going to be opposite. So I'm going to start down and end up. So I know that I'm going to do something like this. I'm coming down from this way, and I also know that there is a bounce. So I believe, oops, let's try this. So let's see if this satisfies everything. So it starts down, ends up, here's the bounce. It goes to my y-intercept. I believe we have it. So what if I couldn't factor this? What if it were 4 terms and I couldn't simplify it? So we're going to talk about Desmos and how it can help you. So this is just desmos.com. So I'm going to click on the graphing calculator and I'm going to put in that function that we just had. And so if you can tell, I didn't know, right, so as you can tell, this is our graph. So this is what I filled in on my graph and right here. And so when I typed this in, this showed me that I had an x-intercept at -1 that was a bounce and an x-intercept at +1. It also showed me my x or my y-intercept is at -1. So notice that they the actual function has the bounce a little bit over. I just guessed it to be at -1. So this is going to give us a more accurate view of our functions. So let's go ahead and play around with this more. So this is our next function, and I'm going to tell you that we're actually going to be able to factor it. So I'm going to show you what it looks like in factored form, but we are going to have Desmos help us. So the first thing I want you to do is, well, let's go ahead and fill in the degree and the leading coefficient. So the degree is 4, the leading coefficient is 1, so I have an even degree and a positive leading coefficient. So I know that my end behavior is going to be positive infinity, positive infinity. I also know that my y-intercept, if I put zeros in all here, I know that my y-intercept is going to be 0, 8. My x-intercepts, I don't know. So that's what I'm going to use Desmos to kind of help me figure that out. Okay, guys, so this is my function. And so I plugged it in, and I saw that my x-intercepts were at x equals -4, x equals -1, x equals 1, and x equals 2. And I didn't notice any bounces as they were going through that. So I'm going to add that to this. So x equals -4, x equals -1, x equals 1, and x equals 2. So let's go ahead and plot those. I also know that it starts in positive infinity and ends in positive infinity. I also know, I forgot about this, that my y-intercept is 8. So let's go to our actual graph and see what this looks like. Wow, so I keep zooming out and it goes way down here. So I'm going to kind of sketch that graph on my paper. Okay, so that's not perfect, but it gives us a good idea. So now I'm going to teach you how to use technology, so how to use Desmos to figure out how to factor this. So our goal is to get it down, to break it down to an x squared. So I'm just going to use one of these, it doesn't matter, and I'm going to do synthetic division. So I'll do -4. So we're going to put -4 in the box, and then we are going to use these coefficients to do synthetic division. So 1, 2, -9, -2, 8. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So if you get through this and this does not end up being a 0, you've done something wrong, because we already know that this is a factor, or that is a solution. So if it's a solution, this should always be 0. Okay, so we've just broken it down to x to the third minus 2x squared minus x, 1x if you want to, plus 2. So I'm going to take another 0 and I'm going to break that down some more. So let's do -1, that's just next. And so I'm just, again, going to take the coefficients and do synthetic division. Okay, so I have x squared minus 3x plus 2. And so I've broken it down so I can just factor this if I want to. So let's kind of keep it in mind what these are. So these are going to turn into the factors x plus 4 because negative 4s are 0, and x plus 1 because negative 1 is our 0. So let me show you what this looks like so far. Okay, so because I've divided these by negative 1 and negative 4, this is what the factored form looks so far. And then I can keep going, or because it's in quadratic form, or it's a quadratic now, I can just factor it. So 2 factors of 2 that add to give me 3, which is 2 and 1. And then it's a negative 3. So I went negative 2, negative 1, and then positive 1 and positive 4. And then notice we're back where we began. So our zeros are 2, 1, negative 1, negative 4. And that is what we had up here to begin with. And that's it, guys.